want to make sure that I am okay. The camera is ready. Hi, welcome or welcome back. This is the Nubian review where we talk about books and all bookish content. Today I will be reading Bearing the Cross. This is my 1 year community read on the Montgomery boycott civil rights movement that took place 70 years ago um, in in Montgomery, Alabama. So, what struck me to um, do this 1 year um, read was the boycotts of corporations and everything that we're dealing with now. Um, it's a lot bigger than just reading this book. It's understanding the process of boycotting, organizing, and you know, these are moments where civil rights leaders that we now know today risk a lot of things to make sure that there was equality for all, not just for few, right? For all. So this is the fourth episode. If you're interested, you can go back and watch the other three episodes. I do everything in 30-minute increments. I may go a couple of minutes over sometimes, but I try to stay to the 30-minute mark so you can digest the readings in small bites and come back for more. So let me get to this reading. And this is not my typical, how can I say, this is not a straight read, straight through. Sometimes I like to stop and give my opinion or how, like a reference, like to I provide clarity on something that I may have read that you probably want more clarity for. So, but if you're interested, go back and read and go back and listen to the other three. Now, I will say this. Um, I am not one of those people that like reading out loud. Like when I was in grammar school, I did not like, taking up the mantle of reading in front of everybody in class. So to put this out there in the ether where anybody can see it is kind of challenging, but um, just if you have any question, just always leave something in the comments and I will address them when I have my first actual discussion on the first, I think the first 10 on, was it part one? So there are several parts in the book. You have I'm going based on the table of contents. This is the table of contents right here, you guys. And so based on the table of contents, all of these reads will be done in 30-minute increments. So take the first part is part one. There are 11 parts, 11 chapters to this read. So part one would be chapter one, part two would be chapter two. So what will identify the chapters that or the part of the book that we're reading is you'll see what they call that, the thumbnail. The thumbnail for each chapter will look different. Okay, so we will go there, and then from there we will, yeah, then we'll have our discussions. So that's how I plan on doing it. I may do something different, but for now, this is what I'm going to stick with, and this is what I'm going to focus on. But like I was saying before, if you want to catch up on the readings, um, yeah, go back and listen to the first three episodes. They're already pre-recorded. So, yes. So once again, we are reading Bearing the Cross. Bearing the Cross by David Garrow. Normally I have, okay, I normally try to keep this by me so you can have an idea of what the book looked like. So it's Bearing the Cross, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a personal portrait by David Garrow. Now, this has been interesting because initially when I talk about the book, it definitely addresses um, the origins of the Montgomery boycott movement, but at the same time, it introduced us to a lot of players who were unknown at the time, and they turned out to be great civil rights activists for justice and equality for all. So right now, I'm rambling. Let me get to what I need to get to, and we will go from there. All right, so we're going to start from here. So where we left off at is that Rosa Parks, she was kicked off the bus. She was taken off the bus, and that was December the 1st. December the 1st of this year marks 70 years. And I'm doing this to coincide with the anniversary of the Montgomery boycott movement. And then on December the 5th was the first day 70 years ago Black Montgomeryans decided to boycott the bus system. Um, and so that's where we left off at. At this point, the boycott was a success. The intentions was for the boycott to be a one day boycott to see how it go. It was basically successful. I think there was a count of maybe 8 people, 8 Black Montgomeryans who got on the bus. And like I said, you never know someone's situation. So but that it was an overall success. It was well organized. And so from there, the city of Montgomery Bus Company, which is a private company, they just decided that, you know, hey, if you all don't want to ride the bus, we can cancel a couple of routes. And I don't understand the logic of that because you're only punishing yourself. Because what's going to happen to the bus drivers who were driving their routes? You're putting them on other routes. I mean, the madness, the rabbit hole goes deep. But you guys forgive me because I tend to ramble on, and I do want to keep these in 30-minute increments. I also have a pre-recorded edition of this as well if you want to see that. But let me get to this. So although happy with the public coverage, the Black leaders discussed Bennett's disastrous performance and the need to move the protests out from under the mantle of the inter I hate to say this, inter the dominational ministerial alliance. There were few options. The leadership of the Women's Political Council knew that any public revelation of their central role will cost many of them their jobs at publicly controlled Alabama State. No other existing organization, including the NAACP chapter, had sufficient breadth of membership to represent all of those already had taken a hand in organizing the boycott. A new organization with freshly chosen leaders will have to be formed. And at this point, this is when they form the new organization for Black Montgomeryans, but I will talk about that later. Abernathy and King agreed that creating a new organization would be the best way to oust Bennett without openly insulting him. Bennett, he's a pastor, so if you interested in who Bennett was, listen to I think it was the second episode that his character was introduced. Abernathy, hmm, without openly insulting Bennett. Abernathy thought that Nixon would be the obvious choice for president of the new suit for the job. Only 1 month earlier, King had tried to persuade Abernathy to take the NAACP's presidency, but he had said no. He was thinking of returning to graduate school. Abernathy knew that King also had declined the NAACP post. In addition to King and Abernathy, several other central figures pondered what to do at the Monday meeting. Nixon and J.E. Pierce discussed the need both to oust Nixon, I mean Bennett, and to block Nixon's um, longtime rival Lewis from winning control. They discussed other possible candidates and recall how favorably impressed they were both they both had been with the young Reverend King, as he spoken to a meeting of the NAACP chapter 4 months earlier. Now, King, he was, I would say, 24, 25 when this took place. So, sometimes you are forced in a position, where there's no doubt that um, you are the person for that moment. So, much like Nixon and Pierce, Rufus Lewis and one of the closest friends, P.E. Conley, spent the weekend discussing what they could do. They also wanted to rid of Bennett. I don't know why I keep saying Nixon, Bennett. And Lewis felt that the unschooled Nixon would be equally unacceptable. An ideal candidate should be acceptable for all the different groups. Lewis told Conley, with his own pastor, Reverend King. True. Lewis conceded the 26-year-old, he was 26, you guys. The 26-year-old King did look like a boy than a man, but he was extremely well educated and an articulate speaker. Those qualities would appeal strongly to the wealthier professional segment of the Black community. People who otherwise may be ambivalent about conditions of the public buses that they rarely patronize. Likewise, the fact that King was a minister and a Baptist minister should help to draw the more conservative clergy into what had begun to be a circularly led effort. Additionally, King's ministerial status also would appeal to the many regular churchgoers in the Black community. Lewis himself might be a passive church member, and from the classes, but he recognized that the strength of the Black churches and its masses would be essential for a successful boycott. King told he told Conley would be an ideal choice. Both men agreed to put him forward at the Monday meeting. Now, at this point, before the bus boycott, King, he was very adamant about not being part of it because he was, um, you know, he was he had been in Montgomery, I think, a little bit over a year. He just started a family. And so he did not want to step up to take that role. However, he did agree, to allow the community members to use the church, to host the meetings and to talk about strategy for the boycott. So, unbeknownst to King, he was going to be forced, he was going to be thrust into leadership. Early that Monday morning, the attention to the Black leadership shifted to the question of how successful the boycott would be. Nixon, Robinson, King, and others arose early to begin their own individual surveys of the bus ridership. King watched several nearly empty buses pass his South Jackson Street home and then set out by the car to observe others. In 1 hour, in 1 hour worth of driving, King spied only 8 Black riders. Hundreds of others could be seen headed towards their jobs on foot or gathering the rides with friends and acquaintances. The Black leaders were pleased. The first hours of the boycott represented a grand success. Now, what they don't talk about is What was the ridership in total? That's one. I don't think we ever got those statistics, not even in history. But for that first hour, which would you would consider rush hour? He didn't say rush hour, but you know, there were hardly anybody on the bus. He saw nobody's on the bus. He saw eight people on the bus, and it was never stated or reported what the other pastors or people in leadership saw on the bus as well. So that would be interesting to know. And I never questioned that. But anyway, at 8 a.m., Mrs. Park's trial got underway before the city court judge, John B. Scott. Although Mrs. Park initially had been charged with violating Montgomery's segregation ordinance, prosecutor Eugene Lowe, aware of how the ordinance specified that a rider could be compelled to surrender one seat if another one was available, dropped the charge and substituted in its place based on the 1945 state law, which right there was illegal in itself. But that law lacked the limiting cause of the city statute. It simply mandated segregation and afterwards drivers unlimited power to enforce it. Lowe placed driver Blake on the stand and described the incident, followed by two white women riders who supported the driver's account. Defense attorney Fred Gray challenged the validity, the validity. Ugh, y'all, I get tongue tied so much. Validity of the segregation law. But Judge Scott immediately announced his verdict guilty with a $10 fine. Gray stated he would appeal. The entire proceeding took barely 5 minutes. It's like going to traffic court. Your case could take 5 minutes, but sitting there for a traffic ticket, I don't know. Several hundred blacks gathered at the courthouse, an unprecedented event, to show their support for Mrs. Park. Among them were Nixon Abernathy and another young minister, Reverend Edgar N. French of Hillard Chapel AME Zion Church. At the conclusion of the trial, as they headed out of the courthouse, Nixon suggested to the two other men, perhaps they should take a few minutes to discuss the up and coming leadership meeting. The three men agreed that a detailed plan of action should be presented both to the mass meeting that night and that the afternoon leadership gathering. First off, the most unanimous mass support that morning suggested that the black community were ready for more than a 1 day boycott. Second, blacks should demand some specific concessions from the bus company before they return to the buses. Number one, of course, would be the ridership plan that Robinson and her colleagues had long been arguing for. Blacks would seat themselves from the rear forward, and whites would seat themselves from the front backwards. No one would ever have to surrender a seat to someone else, and no one would have to ever have to stand on a vacant bus. First come, first serve would be the fair of all. And Montgomery, because its ridership was 75%, um, it was 75% black people. Um, that would be an interesting dynamic. That your ridership and your livelihood is is mostly patronized by 75% of the population you mistreat. Anyway, No one would ever have to surrender their seat to someone else, and no one would ever have to stand up over a vacant seat. First come, first serve will be first of all. The three men agree. Number two, drivers will have to show proper courtesy to all bus patrons at all times. The company, as Robinson and Gray had demanded a earlier a year earlier, should discipline any driver who insulted or assaulted um, a black passenger. Number three, Nixon said blacks who constitute 75% of the ridership should be able to apply for jobs for drivers. Together, the men agreed on these 3 points. And on Abernathy's suggestion that the new organization will be called Montgomery Improvement Association. We are at the 21-minute mark, so let me hurry up. Afternoon, that afternoon, several dozen black leaders assembled at Reverend Bennett's Mount Zion's AME church. Bennett immediately took charge, of course. We are not going to have anything talk. We are not going to have any talking. I am going to let somebody. I am going to let anybody. I am not going to let anybody talk. We came here to work and to outline our program, as Abernathy recalled the scene. I tried. Oh, you guys, it's late. I tried to get the floor, but he said, "Well, Abe, although you're my good friend, I'm not going to even let you talk. So sit down." At this point, an objection will raise that some stool pigeon representing the city council might be represented, and and that a smaller group should meet in a private to map this course of action. This idea was adopted, and the committee of 18 persons was chosen to meet in the pastor's study. As as they walked in, Abernathy reproved Bennett for his stubbornness and asked for the floor when the group convened. After much needing, he agreed reluctantly and promised that as soon as we get to the meeting on the way, he might be recognized. Abernathy remembered. Now you guys remember, Bennett. He was the pastor that no one wanted to elect for a leadership role. Okay, so then I then I then I dropped back and started talking to Reverend King. I told him that he had worked out a proposal for permanent organization of the movement, which included the election of the officers and a statement of aims and objections. Yeah, excuse me. He was very happy to hear this. But who will be the president? King asked. Abernathy's voice, um, Abernathy's voice, his preference for Nixon, and King replied that Lewis may be a better, may make a better man. Well, they were trying to decide whether to elect Lewis or Nixon. By the time Bennett opened the meeting and was calling for me to say what I had to say, I presented Nixon, who in turn asked Reverend French to read the proposal. The committee adopted it verbatim. The group also accepted Abernathy's recommendation of Montgomery Montgomery Improvement Association. So that was the name. As a name for the new organization, then Bennett um, called for nomination for officers. Beginning with President without a moment pause, Rufus Lewis voices rang out. Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Reverend M.L. King for president. P.E. Conley, Lewis's friends, immediately seconded. No other candidates will be put forward, and King was asked if he would accept the position. Abernathy, seated beside him, fully expected King to decline. Instead, after a pause, King told his colleagues, well, if you think I can render some service, I will, and accept the presidency. Bennett was quickly and unanimously Bennett was quickly and ununanimously chosen as vice president. Let me read that again, you guys. Bennett was quickly and unanimously chosen as vice president. Okay, y'all. Nixon was a treasurer, Reverend French as corresponding secretary, and Reverend U.J. Fields as recording secretary. An executive committee of 25 persons, including one of those present, one, including all of those present, was proposed and approved. All right, so that stops me right there. I never want to go over 30 minutes increments, but I will say, um, if you want to catch the actual recording, you can, but also episodes 5, 6, and 7 will be posted this week as well. I don't go over the allotted time I've already kind of marked it off so everybody can keep up in these 30-minute increments. So I think I finished early today, even with all my chattering. Sometimes when I just read through, I can do I can get through it instead of running my mouth. So some of the readings I just read straight through. Some of them I do stop and talk about other impending social issues that are relatable to the Montgomery bus boycott. But once again, I want to thank you for stopping by, hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next episode. If you have any questions, feel free, always feel free to put something in the comment section and I will try to get an answer to you if I can. Until next time, everybody, have a beautiful day wherever you are in the world.